Hey guys, this is John. I'm playing Wolfla in the 15-minute pool on ICC. This player is 1997. Let's play in English against them, c4. Sometimes I use the English as a transpositional weapon and get back into d-pawn openings. e6 is pretty flexible. I could try to play g3 and avoid playing d4 for a while, but you know what? I'm just going to do it. It offers a chance to play knight f6 and go into a nimzo. He plays d5. All right. So we're in a queen's gambit decline, most likely. You could play c6 and make it a triangle system. Nope, we're going to have a regular old queen's gambit decline, and I'm playing my favorite variation, the exchange variation, where you take on d5 early. This is all standard stuff. e3, castles, bishop d3. The decision that white faces in this line is whether to put the knight on e2 or f3. If the knight goes to e2, that's typically connected with the center pawn push plan of playing f3 and then e4. Whereas knight f3, you often more play for a minority attack on the queen side, or sometimes trying to jump the knight into e5. I can play queen c2 and delay this decision, so let's do that. Sometimes people like to play c5. Nope, he just plays c6. So I can play knight ge2 or knight f3. I have plenty of experience with both of them, mainly knight e2. Knight e2 is the move I more often choose. But let's play knight f3 this time around. There have been many examples of me playing knight e2 and then pushing f3 and e4, so we'll mix it up a little bit. Black plays rook e8 in preparation for knight f8. So we'll castle short. And after knight f8, a good move is h3, which has been known for a long time. It was popularized by Karpov. And it's a useful idea in almost every situation to take control of the g4 square. You weaken your king a little bit. You do solve the back rank issue, but it's a nice flexible reply. Okay, knight e4. So I can take on e7 or I can drop the bishop back to f4. Try to recall what is considered best here. So if bishop f4, they can play bishop d6 if they want and persist on offering a trade. But actually, I can take on e4 in that case and win a pawn. So maybe I will play bishop f4 for that reason. Taking on e7 is also possible. Bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, and then play for a typical minority attack. I think there's even some games that go bishop takes e7, queen takes e7, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight d2. But let's preserve this guy for now. I'm going to check my opponent's stats while I have a second. He has only 8 15-minute games under his belt, 6 wins, 2 losses. Plays f5 to support that knight. So that's a strong piece now. But he does weaken the e5 square. Like now if I put a piece in on e5, he can never play f6. All the same, let's play rook b1 and go for b4. So typical minority attack idea. And now, after they played a5, some people just play a3, trying to renew the threat of b4, but it also makes sense to start maneuvering with this knight and go knight a4 and try to sink it into c5. I'm not sure how that squares up with his knight on e4, so I'm just going to play a non-committal move right now. Just bring this rook over to the queen side and wait and see what happens. Yeah, knight g6 makes sense. So bishop back to h2, I wonder if he'll play bishop d6 and offer a trade. I feel like the plan of knight a4 to c5 is a little bit slow under the circumstances. Bishop h2, bishop d6. Let's say bishop takes d6, queen takes d6. a3. Yeah, I'm just not quite sure about that line. I can maybe allow knight takes f4 to happen. Knight takes f4, e takes f4, and just try to play for central control. Not sure about that, though. Okay, let's drop the bishop back. Yeah, they do play for a trade. Okay, let's take. Let's play a3 now. So they have a strong knight on e4. It's hard to deny that. I can't really take this knight now. I certainly can't take it with my knight because they take with their pawn and they'd be forking my bishop and knight. For the moment, I'm still playing around with the idea of going b4, but I do wonder after b4, let's say they trade pawns and then play b5, I might have trouble. You know, this knight on e4 is going to give me problems. It's well supported. I'm now thinking that way back when they played f5, I should have just, or sorry, when they played knight e4, I should have just traded on e7. I know the theory less well than the knight e2 line, but I probably should know this line, so this will be a good springboard for studying this variation. That's what I use these games for. The blitz and standard games I play online, I just treat them as forms of practice, really. And they're great ways to dip your feet in theory and try stuff that over the board you might not be so comfortable playing, because you can do it without consequence and look up the game afterwards and see what you should have done, or if you played it correctly. So he's thinking a little bit here. I do have to watch out for f4 in some positions. I don't think he's going to chance that move when e4 is weak, but later on he might want to do that. If knight takes c3, well, I guess I could take with the b pawn even, but I was thinking queen takes and then pawn f4 might be possible for him. But if knight takes c3, maybe I do take with the b pawn, because if queen takes a3, I can take on f5 then. Bishop takes f5, bishop takes f5, queen takes f5. c3 is defended by my rook on c1. So actually that might be possible. Although knight takes c3, b takes c3, b5 looks potentially annoying. No, that would also leave f5 kind of weak. I could play a4 maybe and try to break up their pawns. And also look to take on f5. Okay, so they just make a developing move. So I think there's a good chance if I play b4 right now that they're going to trade and then play b5. I think that's likely to occur. So after they play b5 in that scenario, my knight on c3 is pretty poorly placed. So a lot of times it's better for white to play knight a4 and try to get the knight into c5. The only thing I'm not sure about, though, is if I go knight a4, can he play f4? Now that I have less pressure on that knight. Like knight a4, f4, and bishop takes e4. Let's say, yeah, d takes e4. If queen takes e4, there's bishop a2, attacking my queen and also the rook on b1. So from the beginning, maybe knight a4, f4, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight d2 could be played. It's a little dangerous. I'm kind of abandoning my king. But it might be all right. I could also play knight a4, f4, knight c5. F takes e3, f takes e3. I have a weakness here, but it might be okay. I don't know about that, though. So knight a4, f4, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight d2. That looks like the critical line. I am attacking e4 twice then, so that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to chance it because I don't see too many other good plans for me. That's the thing. I've already said that b4 has this drawback that he can take and play b5. So I'm going to try to do it like this. Okay, so bishop f7 played instantly. So that looks like prophylaxis. So in the case of knight c5, his bishop is not under attack. I wonder if knight c5, b6, I can go knight b7 attacking the queen, followed by queen takes c6. I don't think my knight gets trapped in that line. It's shaky, but it doesn't look like it's going to get trapped. Yeah, so maybe knight c5, looking to attack that pawn. Looks useful. Okay, let's do that. And if they want to swap knights, that's fine by me. Actually, if knight takes c5, I could take with a d pawn. And then after the queen moves, play bishop takes f5, winning a pawn. So maybe they have to play something like rook e7 now and defend that b pawn laterally. So let's say rook e7, and then maybe then b4. A takes b4, a takes b4. b6, maybe knight a4. Attacking b6. My pawn on b4 is defended by the rook. I don't think rook takes a4 is a thing that I have to be concerned about. All right, so he played the opening quickly, and now he's slowing down a little bit. I think that bodes well for us. You know what I could also think about doing if rook e7? I was thinking I could maybe take on e4 with the bishop and play knight g5, but now that the queen covers that square, that's probably not possible. So here, what if b4, once again? So b4, a takes b4. I could take with a rook and try to attack b7. But that doesn't look sound because he can take c5 maybe, and a3 is hanging in that line. I'm not sure I like that. Queen e7 seems smart because I have to watch knight takes f2 stuff in the future. Like if b4, let's say a takes b4, a takes b4, b6, then if knight a4, I wonder if they have rook takes a4, queen takes a4, knight takes f2. And if king takes f2, queen takes e3, check looks dangerous. Attacking my king and also that loose bishop. So I could play something like rook e1 in order to discourage future sacks on f2, but that doesn't seem right. If bishop takes e4, I think they're going to take the f-pawn, and then if I move my knight, I'm a little worried about queen g5, knight h4 type plans. So we're in a bit of a standoff here. This b4 is just the move that is so obvious, but I don't think I should play it right now, essentially. I really want to get rid of this knight. I could move this knight and try to play f3, but that weakens the e3 pawn. If I play rook e1, I kind of lose control over c5 a bit. If I pass the move back to him, I'm not sure what he's going to do. So it seems like almost like a little mutual Zugzwang light. Maybe queen b3, but queen b3 also weakens f2. a4 I could play. Kind of invites b6. What if b4, a takes b4, a takes b4, b6, and I play knight a6? Is that line so bad? Because that way my bishop is the one defending the knight on a6. And if knight takes f2, I could just play queen takes f2. And I might not need my rook on the c file either. So if b4, if they play b6 right away, I would have to play knight a6 then, if I want to be consistent. Okay, I'm going to try it. Got to do something with our somewhat dwindling time, right? And this is the clearest way forward. Okay, he instantly plays this idea. I was thinking about putting the rook on e1 against that. Just to reinforce. Yeah, let's play it like this. So he might be trying to take advantage of my time situation. But I don't know, because if f takes e3, rook takes e3, there's a lot of heat coming down on that knight on e4. I don't know that he wants that. For the moment, my threat is e takes f4, knight takes f4, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, and then rook takes e4, for instance. Maybe he should play b6 and drive my knight away? Probably. And if b6, am I still coming into a6, or am I playing knight a4 now? I would think I probably, well, that's a tough call, actually. I'm not sure which way is better. I think I would probably still play knight a6. I definitely can't take on e4. So b6, knight takes e4, d takes e4. I could play e takes f4, but he takes d3 with his pawn. I take e7, he takes c2. He's winning a piece there. So if b6, I think I should play knight a6. Then they could take on e3 and be less concerned about rook takes e3 because my knight would not be assisting in the attack on e4. I could always switch it up and take with my pawn, though. And meanwhile, if b6, knight a6 has been played, I'm threatening queen takes c6. Intriguing position. I kind of get the sense he might have rushed f4, but we'll see. It's going to come down to it regardless. Maybe sometimes he can think about rook a3, trying to utilize the c3 square. For the moment, though, e takes f4 is just the biggest issue he's grappling with. I wonder if knight h4 is anything here. Knight h4, knight takes h4. Okay, he takes. So take with a rook? Probably. This allows the knight into f4, but it's the most consistent thing. I mean, I didn't play rook e1 to take with the pawn on e3. I want to try to exploit that pin on the knight. So now my plans might change. Okay, he's playing knight h4, looking for a swap. So if I play, let's say bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight takes h4, queen takes h4, I can not only take the e pawn there with rook takes e4, but I can also just take b7. Maybe that's the simplest. Just go after that b7 pawn. I could also play knight takes h4, queen takes h4, knight takes e4, d takes e4, and then bishop or rook takes d4. So many good options. Bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight takes h4, queen takes h4. That seems like one of the best lines. And then maybe just not take that e pawn, because I think he wants me to take that e pawn. That kind of frees up some play for him. It would be nice to get that light square bishop, though. So knight takes h4, queen takes h4, knight takes e4, d takes e4. Let's say bishop takes e4. Okay, I'm going to start with this move, though. I'm not going to go for the knight taking e4 line. If I take here, he takes on f3 with check, so I can't do that. Yeah, let's just do it this way. Is rook a2 a problem? Nah, I just take on c. No, I can't do that. Knight takes b7, rook a2, rook b2. Rook a1 check, king h2, queen f4, rook g3. That's a little dicey. Maybe I should settle for rook takes e4 right now. Hate to do that, but I think maybe I should do this. Okay, we'll play it that way. I didn't see this rook a2 resource until I was about to play knight takes b7. Gotta watch my time now. So if he takes e4, I'm taking with the queen. Rook takes e4, queen takes e4, queen takes e4, knight takes e4. If bishop g6, we can play f3 or rook e1. Which one's better? Hard to say. Maybe f3? But we have weak d and b pawns we got to be cautious about. Okay. So let's see if he goes for this endgame. Yeah, bishop g6. I mean, unpinning seems to make sense. But I think I should play this move, actually. I'll do that. We'll see if we're able to cook something up a pawn in this endgame. It is nice to simplify the position a little bit, but I'm worried about my d and my b pawns. Those pawns are undeniably weak. So like, let's say rook e8, for instance. Rook e1, maybe he plays rook d8. Then I have to go rook d1. If he goes back to e8, I guess I can move the knight then. Knight d6 or knight c5. Okay, so maybe I have a chance to keep those pawns. It looks a bit awkward. It would be nice to bring my king up, so f3 also prepares a route for the king to come in. Also, maybe I could advance b5, try to offload one of my weak pawns. It's the minority attack after all. I'll be curious to see which way the computer thinks I should capture on e4, or if I should go for the b7 pawn after all. That was a mildly difficult decision. Okay, so he plays his rook in. Thinking b5. But I just don't want that to lose all of my advantage. Yeah, I should probably play b5 though. He can take on e4 and then try to get his rook behind the pawn, behind the d pawn. But then I could swap on c6 and play rook b4. Maybe followed by rook c4. So I can try to keep one extra pawn in the resulting endgame. It'll just be difficult to win because, let's say like rook and 3 versus rook and 2, or even rook and 3 versus rook and 4. Very high likelihood of a draw. I'll be happy if he plays rook e2. Because if rook e2, I can take c6 and then play rook b8 check and get out of the pin that I'm currently under. That's one threat here. Let's pre-move this capture just in case. I think there's a pretty high likelihood he's going to take on e4. Still, though, I don't see a clear way for him to win the pawn or tie my king down. So if I can keep the pawn plus activate my king, I do like my winning chances. Okay, so he played the move that I said he probably shouldn't play. So now I'm thinking take. Take, rook check. And then maybe king f1 thereafter. Or maybe give another check on b7. Yeah, let's do that. Really? Take on e4 in between move. See, because here I don't have to take the bishop. I can take b7. I can also, well, c7 he has bishop c8. So I probably shouldn't do that. But if I take on b7, I'm just keeping 2 extra pawns. C takes b7, I'm threatening the queen. He doesn't have time to take my rook, so he'd have to take with a bishop. I take with my rook. I'm just up 2 pawns in that endgame. Whereas if I play f takes e4, he's taking back. So just making sure he can't do something wacky. But yeah, I can do this. Okay. Now with 2 extra pawns, this endgame should definitely be winning. Also, his king is going to be cut off. Yeah, if rook there, I can play rook here. So defend our pawn. I'm going to play h4, just gain a little space. This is pure technique now. Plays h5. I think advancing d5 could be helpful, but just deciding if I want to play king f1 first or not. Let's actually play king h2. Let's get the king up to g3 before doing anything else. Let's come here. So it's sometimes possible to march, like you put your rook on d8 and put the pawn all the way up to d7 in such positions. Yeah, I think I can do this. So if king e6, I would happily take on g7. Okay, now we get to do this. If king e6, I have king f4. No, actually, I don't have king f4. King e6, I can play rook g8, although he has rook g7 then. King e6, I'll play d7. That's what I'll do. King e6, d7. Okay, he's going to do it this way. Well, now d7, king e7, rook g8 should be good. Okay, let's do it this way. Yeah, he's going to go passive. Okay, so now, just get this right. So I'm going to come here. So my king can't get up to help the pawn because he has all these checks that he can set up. But
Check.
I'm pretty sure I can win this. Thing is, g4 is not going to work. Okay, let's bring our king up a little bit, first of all. Maybe I blew this ending.
Check.
I'll tell you what I want to do. I want
Check.
to play... I want to be able to take with my king on g4 if he captures. Because then I can move my h-pawn up
Check.
and I get a passed f-pawn. Yeah, this is the way to do it. Because even though he can take here with check, I get a passed f-pawn in that case. Yeah, this is the proper way.
Check.
Now I think I'm winning. Because when this pawn hits f6, his king is going to be disturbed. I'm just not sure. He might have been able to defend that, actually. And I'm still going to have to try to beat the clock. So I'll keep the commentary to a minimum now. Huh. It's weird with the d-pawn. I'm used to looking at cases where the pawn's a little further away. With the d-pawn, he has a bit more drawing chances. So if king f7, I can play rook h8 is the thing, and win. My threat is just f5 in this position, by the way. I think he's busted. Keyword think. This h-pawn is insignificant. I mean, I'll take it, perhaps, but I don't really need to. The main threat is f5, f6, check. Forces king out, and then my rook is going to come somewhere. Oh, you know what, though? I can't do that plan. Because if my pawn comes up to f6, king takes, rook f8 check, he has king e7. He might be holding this position. Still. If my pawn was like one file further away, like he's on the c file, he would be lost here. I'm almost positive. With the d pawn, I'm not so sure. Okay, well, let's play f5. So he's going to go right back. I'm going to come here. Is he in zugzwang now? Maybe. King h7, king f6. Huh. If he makes a rook move, I have f6 check. Or just take the pawn. But if rook move, f6 check, king here, yeah, then I can play rook h8. That's right. That should be winning. So f6 check. Yeah,
Check.
I think this is working.
Time.
Rook over. Now he's got to take d7. Then I'm getting check in. Yeah, and my pawn's going to queen faster than his.
Check.
I think I can do this. Yeah, so threatening to promote. 15 seconds left.
Check.
Yeah, now we win. Let's just go blockade that pawn.
Check. Check.
And with this amount of time, we should be able to
Check.
do this. This rudimentary checkmate.
Check. Check.
Yeah. All right, and mate, next move. Interesting endgame, though. Very interesting. Okay, and he just resigned before checkmate. He might have been able to hold that. Because with the d pawn being very close, even though I was creating a passed f pawn, there's some circumstances where even if I get to play f6 check, as happened in the game, I can't win. It's close. Let's go take a look at this game. So it was a QGD, this exchange variation. Very hard fought game. I think Wolfla played well. C6 and knight f3. So the other line is knight e2, which is associated with castling and then playing f3 and going for e4 in the center. Whereas knight f3, white more often pursues that queenside plan that I was mentioning. So rook e8, castles, knight f8, this is all standard. h3 is useful. I should know what to do after knight e4, but like I said, it was not entirely clear to me at the time. I'm thinking now I should just take on e7, like take, queen takes, and then like rook b1, or even take on e4 with the bishop and then play knight d2. But I played bishop f4, but I came to regret the fact that I didn't deal with this knight. So he plays f5. Just going to add the engine in. Yeah, maybe I should jump to the center, as the engine is saying. I was talking about that e5 square and how now that the pawn's on f5, he can never dispute that square. But maybe the best way to capitalize on that is just to move the knight in immediately. So this happened. Rook fc1. I no longer think that's a great idea in this position. Maybe just knight e5 once again. I was just trying to play a little waiting game, but he played logical moves. He attacked my dark square bishop. He traded the dark square bishop. And that knight on e4 is hard to knock down. So right here, if I play b4, then a takes b4, a takes b4, b5, I think is pretty good for him. And this knight has a hard time finding a useful function, because as you can see, all of its available routes are impeded. And I definitely can't take on e4 if I lose a piece. So instead I played knight a4. He goes bishop f7. Computer thinks f4 is playable here. Yeah, because if take, 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 there's this, at the very least, bishop a2, attacking the queen and hitting the rook. There might even be better moves for him, like the computer says bishop d5 is also very strong, going after the knight on f3 after my queen moves. Yeah, so maybe f4 would have been well timed here. I think I was considering just playing knight c5, but then fe, fe, knight takes c5. If queen takes c5, queen g3, and all of a sudden he's threatening bishop takes h3, and my king is looking shaky. Yeah, in the future, I'll eliminate that knight on e4 quicker, because I don't think I want to allow this in a future game. So bishop f7, I play knight c5, he went queen e7. g3 is a move I thought about. I see the engine suggesting that move, stopping f4. I didn't want to weaken my king further, and I was kind of worried about future knight takes f2 stuff. So I didn't play that move, but maybe I should have. I played b4. So here, the computer thinks b6 is decent. And what if I go into a6 as planned? A takes b4, a takes b4, f4. And again, the point of knight a6 is so that if knight takes f2, I can take with the queen, so as to avoid king takes f2, queen takes e3, check. Although actually, yeah, that's right. Because if I, let's say I had played knight a4, and he takes and I takes, I was worried about this possibility. This is something I was trying to avoid. And then knight takes f2. Possibly this is somehow okay for white. The computer seems to think so. But this would be a little scary. Now he's going to get my bishop, and my king is exposed. It just seemed like black had a lot of stuff going for him in this line. So we traded on b4, though, and he plays f4. I went rook e1, so trying to introduce counter threats down the e-file. This position seemed critical. He still had plenty of time around here, it looks like. He spent a little bit of it and probably didn't come up with the best move. Yeah, maybe b6 is better, so kicking this knight away. Because if he can banish my knight to a6 or a4, maybe then any operation he undertakes in the center is strengthened. Yeah, like for instance, if knight a6, and now f takes e3, I can take with a rook, sure, but I'm not threatening to win a pawn in this case, because my knight is not participating in attacking e4. So the computer thinks rook ec8. And if I try to win a pawn, does my knight just get stranded here? Probably. a6 is an undeniably awkward square for that knight, so I wouldn't be surprised if it got stranded somehow like this, if I'm not careful. Yeah, so probably b6 was good for him, but he took on e3, and I took back with the rook, and now it looks like he's going down a pawn. Okay, so here I had a dilemma because I'm going to win a pawn, but I have to figure out which way I want to win it. I took on e4, so I could start with this, and then there's a debate whether to play like knight takes b7. I think I was thinking mainly take on e4 first, like in the game, or just do this and try to win a pawn like this way and keep the bishops on the board. In a sense, it's nice to have a light square bishop opposing his, but somehow I felt like it would also be good to go into a knight versus bishop position. But I overlooked that rook a2 resource. So as played in the game, bishop takes e4, d takes e4, knight takes h4, queen takes, rook takes e4. Because if knight takes b7, I think this gives him counterplay. I can't move my queen because if I do, queen takes f2 is killer. So like if I go after this pawn, queen takes
Check.
f2 check, suddenly he's supported on the second rank. I'm just getting mated next move. Queen takes g2. So I briefly looked at the line here, rook b2,
Check.
rook a1 check. If I want to avoid a draw after this, I would have to play after rook a1, king f2, but then queen
Check.
f4. And somehow this seemed weakening to me. If rook g3, my rook is pinned. Maybe you can even go h4, h5. Pawn g3, I don't know. I've just got weaknesses like f2, f3. The computer thinks black has some compensation, maybe not quite enough, but this seemed a little scary. So as soon as I saw rook a2, I was done with that line, and I just decided to trade into this endgame. I think black should hold this endgame, definitely. He's down one pawn, but he has a better pawn structure, and for the moment he has a little initiative, because after bishop g6, I have to take a timeout defending my knight, and also it's going to take me a moment to get out of the pin. Still, though, it looks like I can keep the pawn. So let's say rook e8. I was looking at this line. Rook e1 to defend the knight, and now rook d8, forcing rook d1. And if he goes back, rook here, I can move this knight now, like knight d6. Computer says just play some some move like bishop f7 or king f7. Yeah, but white keeps the pawn in this line, so I can torture him from here. As played in the game, though, he definitely botched this. Because after b5, rook e2 is definitely not good, I don't think. Maybe he should play bishop takes e4, f takes e4, rook d2, and just get behind the d pawn, like I was saying. And then something like b takes c6, b takes c6, rook b4 would occur. Maybe he can bring up his king now. I can go after c6, but I'll lose d4 if I do. It's hard for me to activate my king, because if I approach, like, he might win g2. But then again, maybe I can give up g2 in the hopes of, like, say I do this. Maybe the plan is here, here, let him take g2, whereas I win these, and I have two connected passers. I don't know, though, because his king can come over. Like king here, king f1, say king d6, defending this pawn. This would be very difficult for me to win. Because his rook is active, he's cutting off my king. And also my rook is tied down. I would much rather like to have a roving rook where I go after his pawns. But as played, he made the mistake of inserting bishop takes e4, and I think after c takes b7, I mean, I'm up 2 pawns. This proved to be more difficult than I thought it would be, but I really think his position should be busted. So I want to play rook d7 as opposed to rook b4 because I want to cut off his king. Also, I can march this pawn up, whereas on b4 I wouldn't be able to do that. So how to win this position? If I push the pawn all the way to d7 with my rook on d8, I have to make sure I can create another passed pawn. And it has to be the f-pawn, as you saw in the game. Like, I have to be able to push the pawn up to f6. Hopefully this will make a little more sense as we play it out. But this is a typical type of endgame. It's actually an endgame I teach my students because it's so common. You often see it where the side trying to win is just up 1 pawn. You might look at extreme scenarios where it's like the A file, so like a pawn on a7 for white and a rook on a8. The closer it gets to the other side of the board where the remaining pawns are, the more likely it is your opponent can escape with a draw. But with having a 2-pawn advantage here, I think I should definitely win. It was a little hard, though. I had less than 2 minutes, and it wasn't easy to figure out. I'm pretty sure I misplayed it somehow. The computer says don't even bother moving the d-pawn. Just play rook d5. What if he just hangs out here? Play f4, king g6. I'm just going to play the computer line.
Check.
Check. Let's say king here. d5. Okay. then I have everything guarded. Like my rook guards the d pawn laterally, and it also guards the g2 pawn. So my king can come up and help advance the pawn. If ever we get into a situation where like he gives up his h pawn for my d pawn, and I have a 3-1 advantage on one side of the board, this is a total win. I'll just trade pawns, and I'll have 2 connected pawns versus his none, and that's a win every time, provided some extreme scenarios. So that's probably what I should have done. I thought I could win like I did in the game by advancing my d pawn, but I'm now not so sure. The computer still gives a decisive edge to white, but I'm not completely sure. So here I play d7. So I'm hoping he goes like king e7, so I can just bring my rook away. He has to take the pawn. Yeah, like king takes d7, and then I can take here, and it's going to be the same scenario. Actually, even worse, because he can't even defend h5 now. I'm just going to go here and take it. If he tries to defend, he definitely can't trade rooks. So he did the right thing after d7, because my threat is rook f8. Although I was actually wondering about that briefly. Like, say he plays rook d2, rook
Check.
f8, king here,
Check.
queen. I'll be up a pawn in this endgame, but is it winning? It should be. King f4, king e7, king g5, king here. Yeah, king h6. That's an important move. Stop him from getting here. Yeah, and he's going to run out of moves, because now he can only stay on f7 and f6 to guard the pawn, and I can just advance g4. He's got to take it. I take. King f7, and then g5 puts him in zugzwang. His king can't stay guarding the pawn, and we win. Okay, so that was winning. I wasn't quite sure about that transition to the pawn endgame. Because, like, I have a one-move jump on him, but if his king were on g7 here, actually that would also be winning for me. I could play f4, f5, and then after take, king takes, he would lose the h-pawn eventually. Okay, so that was also winning too. So no need to be afraid of that. But he did the right thing. He hid his king. He put it on g7. So this is what happens in these scenarios where you push the pawn to the 7th rank, but your rook is blocking it. Your opponent has to hang out on these 2 squares, g7 or h7 with their king. Otherwise, their king is exposed to a check followed by queening the pawn. So we're in a bit of a standoff now because he's got to shuffle his king between those squares or move his rook around on the d file. But I can't move my rook yet because as soon as I do, he's going to take on d7. Oh yeah, and f7 is not a safe square because I have rook h8. It's a useful trick to know. And then if rook takes d7, we get this trade in this way. It's even more extreme if the pawn's further to the left, because then it would just be a skewer and win the rook. Here, we don't win the rook, but we get to trade into the winning pawn endgame, as we already established. So he played king g7. So now the big question, can I win this? Because I played king f2. Note he can't take the pawn on h4, because I just move my rook and I'm going to queen. Or rook g8 is also good. Make him take it, queen check, and then we pick up the rook. So his rook is now completely tethered to the d file. His king is forced to occupy one of those 2 squares. It should be an easy win, right? But you know, the problem in these positions is like if you try to approach with your king and have it come up to e6 or e7 to assist the pawn and free up your rook, then you're going to get checked a bunch. So your opponent's going to play checks from behind. So what I would like to do is create another pass pawn, as you saw in the game. Like I'd love to get like if I could eliminate all these pawns, so get rid of his g and h, maybe trade it for my g and h, then I could push my f6 pawn, try to get him to take it, and then play rook f8. The problem, though, is even in that simplified scenario, if you imagine that, if king takes f6, rook f8, he has king e7 a lot of times. And even though I queen, his king and his rook are stopping that. So I don't know with the d-pawn if this is how clear this is. The computer is still saying +5, which normally you would take it to be a win, but we know computers are bad in these endgames. Yeah, like if I play g4 here, and he takes, and I take back, can I win this? Let's just follow the computer line. Rook d1. If h5, okay, I have 2 passed pawns, but you guys might see what the problem is. If I ever play h6 check, trying to disturb his king, trying to get him to take it so I can play rook h8 followed by queen, he's not going to take it. He's just going to sidestep to h7. So let's follow the engine line. Here, king f4, check. King e5, check. King d4. I don't think the engine's going to suggest anything sensible. Yeah, it's saying hang out in the center, but he has like unlimited checks. There's no shelter for my king. Yeah, so this is just going to be a draw. I would eventually like zigzag Well, actually, he wouldn't want to do that one. Let's say he goes rook d1 now. I would eventually zigzag back and try to do this. But like I said, he can play king h7, and I'm up 2 pawns, but they're both blocked, and he'll just have to check me as soon as my king gets close to the e-pawn. It's a draw. So quite clearly, like, white has to be careful how I go about creating a passed pawn. I want it so I can get a passed f-pawn, not a passed g or an h-pawn. So after all the trades are done, I want it to be a passed f-pawn, but even then I'm not so sure. Plus, we were very low on time. Miso more than him.
Check.
So we moved around a little bit. Finally, I played g4. And I like the timing on that move, because if he checks here, I can play king e5 and then take on h5, like after he moves. Yeah, and I think once this happens, I get my desired scenario with the f-pawn. Okay, now the computer thinks this is a definite win, so that's good to know. So he took, I took with my king. It's interesting that the computer doesn't like that, but f takes g4, like I said, then we're looking at having to play h5, but we don't want to pass h-pawn. So take.
Check.
He gave a check here. I'm just looking also at what the computer says like this. But I think this would work out the same way. Eventually, I'll play this move. Maybe play f4 first. Just so if h5 here, I can take it. So let's say he's waiting. Yeah, rook moves away somewhere. I'll do this, and this is similar to the game. I'm trying to get the passed f-pawn. Sorry, my voice is kind of fading a little bit here. But going back to the game, take, king takes. Counterintuitive, shattering your own pawns.
Check.
Check, f4. Here, and now I played h5.
Check.
Looks like it just gives up a pawn for free, but again, it's important that we get the passed h-pawn. King h7, f5. Maybe it is a draw, though. King g7, king g5. So if he plays h4 here, I take it. Rook d1. Yeah, this is the scenario that's the problem, because I have a d pawn rather than like a c, b, or a pawn. Because normally f6 check would be winning here. But in this case, he can take, and even though I check him on f8, like we established earlier, king e7, and he's in time to stop the pawn from queening. Whereas if you shift everything over a file, that's just a win. Like if I had pawn c7, rook c8, I give a check, king e7, I promote, he'd have to give up his rook that is on c1 for the queen. So maybe he had a draw at the end, h4, run the pawn. And I can't push f6 yet, I gotta go back and take the pawn. Yeah, that looks like a draw. Take, rook d1. Yeah, I'd fiddle around for a while here with my limited time and maybe try to win, but king g1, he can start checking again. And if ever f6 is played, king f7. Or sorry, king takes f6. Yeah, again, the computer says f5, but that doesn't make a difference. King g5, he can even give up the pawn. This is a draw, even though it's +4 according to the engine. There's never any progress that's going to be made. So, you know what? It's possible that when I push the pawn to d7, he can draw. I think that's kind of what I'm establishing here. Pawn d7, he puts the king back on g7. Don't believe the computer evaluation. Looks like it to me. So, yeah, I should have tried to win in a different manner. I think that method the computer was saying, like rook d5, put the rook on g5, threaten his h-pawn, and then push the pawn to d5, and my rook would hold. So I think it was like, yeah, it was like right here. Let's say rook d5. Let's say he does something like this. Check. He comes here to defend this pawn. Come here. Let's say rook here. And now my king can kind of roam freely. Maybe I have to be a little careful. Like check. He can go after that pawn. Although even in this case, actually, this should be winning. His king is out of bounds, and my king is assisting the pawn now. Yeah, this is a win. So I should have done something like that rather than push the pawn. If it wasn't a d pawn, if it was a c or b or a pawn, I could have won as in the game. But okay, so very hard-fought game. I know this video went a little long with the analysis, but that rook endgame was very interesting. In these technical rook endgames, you should know the ideas. Regardless of your strength, it makes sense to start studying stuff like this. 2 books I can recommend are 100 Endgames You Must Know by Jesus de la Villa and another book called Amateur to IM by Jonathan Hawkins. It's an excellent book. So, hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll be back tomorrow with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.